Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing great. In this video, I want to cover my 3 favorite apps for drawing and painting on iPad after 5 years of use. So in 2023, I've cut down all the drawing apps I use on my iPad to only 3: Procreate, Artstudio, and ClipStudio. Most of my client work is done on PC with ClipStudio and a tablet. So when I take out my iPad, it's mostly for personal work. And that counts as the biggest reason behind why I'm choosing these 3 apps. So let's get into it. After 5 years of use for all of them, I will tell you why I use them now, and this video is tailored to my personal use of these apps and is not meant to be a general objective review. I will only talk about the drawing and painting experience relative to my usage. So let's get started with Procreate first. Procreate is the app I use the most as a sketchbook for personal work. It is the most limited app in terms of what you can do and the tools available compared to Artstudio and ClipStudio, my 2 other ones. But it is also the most streamlined. For example, the simple fact of never saving and having no loading window ever on your screen between going to your gallery and into a painting makes it really like pulling out a sheet of paper and starting to draw. The brush engine is nice enough to have a lot of possibilities if you want to go really far into brush design, or just comes loaded with basic brushes that are nice out of the box if you just want to paint without tinkering too much. Everything in Procreate feels really nice, like working analog, as well as the whole process of painting and advancing step by step. But unfortunately, this is also where the downside starts. Because it also emulates the destructive way of working in an analog kind of way, this app doesn't have adjustment layers, for example. When you use an adjustment, it will be directly applied on the layer you are on and in a destructive way. Which means when you want to make an adjustment, like using curves on your whole image, color balancing, changing a tint or saturation, or changing colors quickly or levels, even gradient maps and so on, you will need to merge all your layers into one and apply the adjustment on that layer. If you want to go back and change something, then you better have also duplicated that layer to be able to use a new adjustment on it. You can't just go back in an adjustment layer and just tinker in the settings. That does not work. If you are used to a very digital way of working, this can feel very clunky. It usually never is a problem for personal work because I know where I want to go, but at the same time I can't use this when doing client work, because almost always the client will ask you to change certain colors or shadows just to see what looks best. With an adjustment layer, you can do this effortlessly. In the meantime, in Procreate, it quickly becomes a pain. Another thing I don't really enjoy in Procreate is line art. I'm not saying it's bad, not by any means, but it just feels like every brush, when it gets in a really small size on the edges, has a lot of aliasing. And I didn't manage to get any brush looking really nice for drawing in black and white. ClipStudio has an anti-aliasing function with different steps, which is wonderful, and Artstudio Pro has some really nice inking brushes from the get-go. Which brings us nicely to ClipStudio, which I also love for the opposite reasons as Procreate. This is the software I use primarily on desktop to do every single piece of commercial work, simply because I feel it has the most extensive library of tools, assets, and everything needed to go fast in a professional workflow. Also, I can share the files to my iPad and continue working on the app version of ClipStudio with all the same functionalities. You have every adjustment layer you could ever need, 3D models, so many tools, vector layers, so much options, also only available in this software and no other one. Also, I feel drawing line art in this app is so much better than any other, by far. You have a lot of control over your lines, as well as having vector layers which can be perfect if you want that extra step of control over the line art. Why I don't use this software for personal work mainly is primarily because of the loading times and the workflow. it takes too much time to get to a painting. Even creating a new canvas, with all these options possible, saving it in the right folder and the interface is pretty cluttered with all the tools, making me lose precious space on my iPad if my goal was just to sketch or paint. Also, there is this weird need to be connected to your account and internet for the app to open properly, which can make it pretty annoying if you're on the go. But overall, it's just another instance of slowing you down when you just want to open a blank page and start drawing. Which is my main point with this app. When you open it, it feels like work. Everything you have is perfect for work, but I don't want to feel like work when I'm drawing for myself. So this is why it's also the least used when I want to draw for my personal projects. Although sometimes I can use it if I require a very specific tool. And finally, all this brings us to Artstudio, the happy midpoint between these two previous apps. Artstudio feels like Procreate when drawing, but while also having adjustment layers and more tools at your disposal. Kind of like an illustration-focused version of Photoshop. These same Photoshop brushes also import very well in Artstudio compared to Procreate. This app is still a little slow compared to Procreate, I think. When opening files and switching to a different painting, you will also have open your previous painting in a window to quickly switch between one and the other. This could be useful to copy and paste from one file to the other, but usually it's just annoying to see the little pop-up number when having multiple files open. Also, the autosave in this app is just a bit noticeable and can bring you a bit out of your flow when you're drawing. Overall, I use this one for personal drawings when I want to go a little further than Procreate, or when I want to use mostly line art and different tools. Having adjustment layers and layer effects also make illustration as well as basic graphic design work more enjoyable. For example, techniques like using the lasso tool to just select parts and fill them in is much quicker than Procreate, but also a bit slower than ClipStudio Pro, so everything is a give and take. This app was my most used of the free apps overall about 2 years ago, and now has become my least used as I become more accustomed to Procreate and ClipStudio for work. But I still use it regularly because of its unique blend between a variety of tools and a simple workflow in an interface. For example, if I had to only keep one app on the iPad, this one would be it for this reason. I could keep doing professional work on desktop in ClipStudio, and if I really had to, I could export a PSD file to continue working here. I have done some professional work on this app only while I didn't have a computer available, and while it was more difficult and cumbersome than doing it on desktop, I still managed to finish the work as intended. And this is work I would not have done on Procreate because of how annoying it would have been. This is also the app I would recommend if you only want one on your iPad and just want to start drawing and get better at it. I mean, it can do everything Procreate can and much more, while having some little slowdowns compared to it. You will be rewarded with much more capabilities if you decide to learn multiple techniques of digital art. Of course, me using only these free apps doesn't mean that they are the only ones I've used in the past. Likes such as Medibang, Paintstorm, Ibis Paint, Tayasui Sketch, Autodesk, Sketchbook, Adobe Fresco and more. All of them were very fine apps. Just because I don't mention them here doesn't mean at all they are bad. But they just didn't have some unique strong point. Like Procreate, which is the most streamlined app and quick to use, it feels the most natural and most enjoyable, even with all its limitations. Some might say it's because of these limitations that the app can be so very fast and natural. While ClipStudio is the most powerful and feature-rich of any program, so it's my go-to when I need to go full professional, but it's also the slowest when you have to move and tinker around all the options. But when you can get going and you really know your interface, it can be the quickest one to create. And meanwhile, I think Artstudio is the most balanced among these apps. Still pretty simple, the UI is nice, it has a lot of functions, and it would be my one and only app if I could only ever have one on my iPad. There you go, this is my top 3 apps after 5 years of use drawing and painting on the iPad Pro. I would be curious to know what are your favorite apps, so please tell me in the comments down below. Maybe I'll just hear some names I haven't heard before and go give them a try. Are there any apps you use because they have one thing they do in particular that you feel is better than any other? And this one particular trait is something you value overall, which is why you still continue using this app. So in the meantime, I'll say bye everyone, keep creating, and I love you all.